Older, unmarried women in Shanghai are getting caught up in an almost frantic level of competition. Recently, a lot of women have been coming to blind dates. Some women, around the age of 35, have even said that they do not want a bride price. They do not require the man to have a house or a car, and as long as he is willing to marry them, he does not have to provide anything. They can even bring a home in Shanghai into the marriage themselves. But even under those conditions, many men hear their age and reject them immediately. There is a 36-year-old woman with a doctorate who owns a 130-square-meter apartment behind Jing'an Temple in Shanghai. Her conditions are already this good, yet men still turn her down. Is there really no man willing to come and get to know her? More and more young people today are unwilling to get married. Do you know the underlying logic behind why they do not want marriage? It is because we genuinely cannot see any hope. Look at the mortgage and car loan, then look at our tiny paychecks. Think about the expectations we had for the future when we had just graduated, and then look at where we are now. How could we dare to think about something as difficult as getting married and having children? We simply do not have enough money in our pockets. I do not have a house, I do not have a car, and I do not have savings. What age do you think counts as an older unmarried woman? After 28, I would say. Why 28? Because once they reach 28, many women start to feel anxious, especially women whose own conditions are fairly ordinary, but who still demand that the other person be perfect in every way. They may suddenly discover that the men they once looked down on have already found younger partners. To put it plainly, being 28 itself is not the problem. The problem is being 28 and still not recognizing reality, still dreaming about those stories where a domineering CEO falls in love with me. I hope my husband despises me because I weigh 180 jin and cruelly abandons me. To make a living, I go to the street to sell boxed meals. On the very first day, I meet a handsome, domineering CEO walking toward me. He suddenly pulls me into his car. Just when I am frightened, I look closely and realize that he is my middle school classmate. But after only a few days at school back then, he transferred somewhere else. It turns out that he had secretly liked me at the time. Now he has learned that I am divorced, so he deliberately came looking for me and confessed his love. Why do we no longer accept women over 35 who have never been married? Because for an unmarried woman at that age, it really becomes very difficult for you to fall in love and get married again. I have worked as a matchmaker for 6 years. I have found that many women in their 30s are impatient and very picky. Whether your conditions are good or bad, they often speak very forcefully. The women in their 20s whom we deal with are usually very easygoing. They are easy to talk to, things are easier to arrange, conversations go well, and some are even willing to go to the man's home and cook a meal or do something like that. But when women in their 30s come for blind dates, they often seem to have lost that kind of willingness. Even if you put a handsome man right in front of them, it can still be difficult to arrange. They simply do not want to accommodate anyone. I think the reason I am already 36 and still unmarried is that I feel there are very few men worth entrusting your life to. There are simply not many men you can truly rely on. And men can make our lives become unsettled. Have you noticed that? There are too many variables. At the beginning, when he loves you desperately. When he stops loving you, he can simply say he does not love you anymore. When he treats you well, he almost wants to give his life to you. When he no longer loves you, he feels that everything he once gave you is something you owe him for. At the beginning, when you treat him well, he will be extremely moved. But after a long time, he may begin to take it for granted. In Shanghai alone, there are said to be more than 2 million women who are unmarried. Among them, around 1 million are unmarried women over the age of 30. Behind these numbers, what is reflected is not merely a problem of dating and marriage. It is also a helpless choice made by young people in major cities when they face real-life pressure. Some people in the industry believe that one reason some older single women have delayed marriage for so long is that their requirements for a partner are relatively high. This is especially true in a megacity like Shanghai. Many women have good educational backgrounds and decent incomes. Some have even established themselves firmly in their careers. Naturally, they hope to find a local man whose conditions are better than their own in every respect. The problem is that the number of such men is limited. This creates an awkward situation in the marriage market. The women themselves have good conditions, yet it is still very difficult for them to find a suitable partner. Hello, I am that older, unmarried woman who is almost 40, has never married, and has never had children. Today I went on a blind date and encountered something strange. We had not met many times. In fact, it was only our first meeting, so we were still getting to know each other rather cautiously. But the man suddenly asked me, "Could you accept it if there were no bride price?" Because where we Beijing people are concerned, he said, marriage definitely does not involve a bride price. His question completely confused me. The two of us had not even gotten to know each other yet. We had not understood each other's temper, personality, or anything else, and he was already bringing up the bride price. I did not even know how to answer. I originally thought that because I had earned a considerable amount of wealth through my own efforts and had gradually become independent, I definitely would not become anxious or confused by the idea that once you reach a certain age, you are supposed to get married and have children. But I have to admit that no matter how much progress you make in your career, no matter how much respect you receive from others, and no matter how much wealth you possess, once you reach a certain age, it seems that you still have to face the questions: should I choose marriage? Should I have children? I divorced when I was young, and he said that he would never get married again in his lifetime because he had already tried it. Poor people are not suited for marriage, he said. In marriages between ordinary people, or poor people, what appears to be an emotional conflict is actually, in his view, 100% about money. It is because there is no money. In married life, eating, drinking, and every basic daily necessity requires money. Social obligations and relationships require money. Then there are your car loan, your mortgage, and the next generation. Which one of these does not require money? Two people can work themselves to exhaustion for an entire month, yet at the end they still cannot see any money and cannot save even a single cent. The blogger's small book gives two pieces of advice. First, before getting married, think carefully about whether the two people's combined income can actually support married life. If they cannot even afford basic living expenses, then they need to think very carefully about whether they are truly suited to marriage. Second, think in advance about who will take care of the child in the future. Will one person quit work and stay home full-time to care for the child while the family relies on the other person's income? Or will the parents on both sides help care for the child? He believes that after thinking these issues through clearly, it is still not too late to consider marriage. You must not get married simply because of a momentary impulse, because what truly sustains a marriage, in addition to feelings, is responsibility and the willingness to shoulder real-life obligations. A domineering CEO fell in love with me, a 34-year-old divorced mother with a child. This is not a short drama, this is my real life. The CEO is the owner of two small companies, while I am a divorced working parent raising a child. We met online and have been together for 5 years. He treats my daughter as if she were his own. That is what moves me the most. To be fair, if it were me, I do not think I could treat someone else's child that well. Recently, he has been very busy, working overtime at a high-tech company. We have not seen each other for 2 days. When you have been together for a long time, you begin to miss each other after not seeing each other for a few days. But the two of us can still send countless messages every day. One moment we bicker, and the next we tell each other what is in our hearts. Today, my childhood friend got divorced. To be honest, I really do not think her husband was a bad man. He came from the countryside and was extremely hard-working and dependable. He had grown medicinal herbs. Before dawn, he would already be out working in the fields. He had also worked in freight transport, and staying up late to travel on the road was normal for him. He was wholeheartedly trying to earn money for the family. Later, his father wanted to start a business and turn the family's situation around, but the business lost money, and the losses were a complete mess. My friend often told me that her husband did not have a proper job, did not have the 5 social insurances and 1 housing fund, and could not give her and their child a stable life. She and her husband also argued frequently, sometimes right at the dinner table, and when things became serious, they even fought. I thought you would not contact me anymore. The man from my blind date had not contacted me for 4 days, and I thought he was going to give up on this blind date. Ever since the last time we met, he had not taken the initiative to contact me again. During a previous casual conversation, I had mentioned that I would be returning from a business trip on Thursday evening and would arrive at the station at a little after 5, but I had not given him the exact train number. For the past few days, I had been struggling with whether I should take the initiative and ask him what he thought. I never expected that after I walked out of the station, I would see a familiar figure. He was actually waiting for me at the exit. "Why are you here?" "I came to pick you up." "When did you get here?" "I just arrived." To those unmarried girls who have not yet married, let me give you a little advice as someone who has been through it. When you are looking for a partner, especially if you are a woman, if you can find someone whose financial conditions are a little better, then try to find someone whose financial conditions are a little better. If possible, try to find someone whose parents are able to help. Because if his family's financial conditions are poor, and in the future everything depends on that one man to accomplish it all, including buying a home, buying a car, and paying for marriage, then the two of you will truly be exhausted. Have you noticed that there are more and more older, unmarried women now? The main culprit, some people say, is short-form, domineering CEO content. Many women spend every day watching this kind of mindless, domineering CEO short drama. The men in these stories all have good figures, are around 1.75 meters tall, handsome, come from excellent family backgrounds, are willing to spend money, lower themselves to pursue the woman, constantly provide emotional value, and accommodate women unconditionally. After watching this for a long time, many people can no longer distinguish between a script and reality. They keep fantasizing that in real life they can also meet a perfect CEO like that. I think that if a man has no financial foundation, no real ability, and no income, he absolutely should not rush into marriage. You simply do not have the ability to bear the expenses of this family, your wife's expenses and your child's expenses. You cannot afford it. Because getting married now often means needing a car, needing a house, or even needing 3 or 5 gin of cash. There are simply not many people who can afford all of that, especially if you are just an ordinary wage earner. I was born in 1991. I am 35 this year and still unmarried, so I count as an older single man. I have found that older single men and women like me face the same problem. There is no one to talk to, and it feels as though we may never be able to get married anymore. First, regarding marriage, I think the best age to marry is roughly between 27 and 30. When people are in their 20s, most of them have not fully grown up psychologically. Their temperament has not settled, their thinking is not mature, and their understanding of love and marriage comes almost entirely from television dramas and their own imagination. The blogger says that many people in their 20s understand very little about marriage and may even be confused about it. Two people impulsively get married, but when they truly have to face daily necessities, family responsibilities, and all kinds of real-life pressures, they discover that they were never prepared. In the end, they can only reach the point of divorce. By around the age of 30, however, most ordinary people have experienced some of the trials of society. Their thinking becomes relatively more mature, and they have a better idea of what kind of life they want. Entering marriage at that point may actually be more stable. There must be reasons why someone is still unmarried at 30. In the Anyangong, if a man is over 30 and still single, I almost do not even need to ask anymore. There are basically only a few common reasons. The first is that he does not pay attention to his appearance. He dresses sloppily, wears the same kind of white t-shirt or black t-shirt and casual pants every day, has a simple crew cut, and has almost nothing about him that stands out. The second is that he is extremely homebound. He has no social circle, no female friends, and every day is simply work and home, a two-point routine. He genuinely does not attend gatherings and does not want to make friends. The blogger says the third situation is that some men are more introverted, which causes them to remain unable to find a partner. When these men meet women, they often appear awkward and do not dare to start a conversation. Even when they meet a woman they like, they often miss the opportunity because they are not good at expressing themselves or communicating proactively. The fourth situation is that the man's income is low. In the real marriage and dating market, financial conditions are often a factor that many people have no choice but to consider. For men with lower incomes, facing the cost of marriage, buying a home, and living expenses after marriage can make them lack confidence. They may feel that they do not have sufficient financial conditions to enter marriage. Let me tell you, in today's society, people really should not have desires that are too unrealistic. People are divided into different levels. If you did not get into the civil service and you do not have a stable job, then perhaps you should not insist on finding some exceptionally beautiful woman. You may not be able to keep that kind of relationship. Information is extremely widespread in today's world. Everyone can see what other people's everyday lives look like. Everyone knows much more than before. So people need to understand themselves and know their own position. Older single men are starting to become anxious. Some people say those older single men are even more anxious than older single women. Come on. I am telling you that most older single men are not anxious. Between older single men and older single women, who is more anxious? Who is in more of a hurry? Some people even say older single men are more anxious. But many older single men have already chosen to lie flat. What are they anxious about? Their main limitation is simply economic. Once a man has a car, a house, savings, and a successful career, even if he was born in the 1980s, it is not impossible for him to find someone born after 2000. He can still want a baby. But can older women do the same? Many older women, when they are in their 20s, feel that they are still young and still have many opportunities, so they can choose slowly. But after a few years pass, classmates, colleagues, and friends around them gradually get married and have children. Only then do they realize that their range of choices is getting smaller and smaller. Once they are in their 30s, trying to find someone whose age, education, income, family background, and other conditions all match becomes increasingly difficult. Meanwhile, many men are unwilling to marry because they feel that they do not have enough financial strength. Some say, "My own life is already going badly. Why should I get married? Should I make another person stay beside me and go through this poverty with me, living days where we cannot see any hope?" Other men have their own practical considerations. They believe that once they marry, they will have to face the bride price, buying a house, the wedding, and all kinds of living expenses after marriage. The financial pressure will increase immediately. Rather than carry these heavy burdens just to get married, they would rather live alone, earn their own money, and spend it themselves. Life may be simple, but at least there is not such enormous financial pressure. So for them, it is not that they do not want love. They simply feel that the cost of marriage is too high, making them increasingly afraid to step into marriage. Looking back at the entire story, the most striking issue is not simply that more people are marrying later, but that the gap between expectations for marriage and real-life circumstances appears to be growing wider. The video mentions that Shanghai alone has more than 2 million unmarried women, with around 1 million unmarried women over the age of 30. It also presents the case of a 36-year-old woman with a doctorate who owns a 130-square-meter apartment near Jing'an Temple, yet still struggles to find a suitable partner. Although these figures and personal stories are presented from different perspectives, they all point to the same reality. Marriage today is no longer simply about love. Housing, income, the cost of raising children, employment, responsibilities toward parents, bride price, wedding expenses, and the financial burden of married life are all forcing people to think much more carefully before starting a family. One matchmaker in the video says she has worked in the industry for 6 years and has noticed clear differences in attitudes, expectations, and willingness to compromise among people of different ages. At the same time, many men also admit that it is not that they do not want love or marriage. Instead, they worry that they are not financially capable of supporting a family. Perhaps the most important question is not whether older unmarried men or women have a greater disadvantage in the marriage market. What matters more is whether people can realistically understand their own circumstances, expectations, and limitations. Marriage cannot survive on a moment of passion alone, but it also cannot become an endless checklist of requirements. Beyond love, a lasting relationship requires mutual respect, responsibility, the ability to share pressure, and a realistic plan for building a life together. What do you think is making young people in China's major cities increasingly cautious about marriage? Is it economic pressure, increasingly demanding expectations when choosing a partner, or a broader change in how people view love, marriage, and family? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching all the way to the end. If you found this discussion meaningful, please support the channel and stay with us for more stories and perspectives on life and society in China.